So, guys, I'm here with Joey Clift, a very talented writer. I'd have to say a very talented comedian from everything I've seen you on. And yeah, so thank you, Joey, for meeting with me. I appreciate it. How are you doing?
Hey, Ronnie. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I got to say, this is the first ever radio show that I've been on where the host is Cowlitz. So this is big for me. I hear we might actually be cousins.
Yeah, we're gonna have to look that up. Awesome. Well, I thank you so much for meeting with me. I appreciate it. Like you just said, Joey is also a member of my tribe, which is the Cowlitz, or in the correct phrase, Poignant. So first off, tell us a little bit about yourself so people who don't know you can get to know you.
Yeah, for sure. As you mentioned, I'm a comedian, TV writer, currently living in Los Angeles. I grew up in Washington State. I'm an enrolled Cowlitz, member of our tribe, but I grew up on the Tulalip Reservation. Mm-hmm. Not for any like cultural reason other than just like, I think that my mom, when she turned 18, she was like, I don't want to live near my family. So we headed north, but, I definitely visited the homeland a ton because that's where my grandparents live. And, whenever I'm in Washington, I always try to swing by Ilana and, have a really nice steak at, the Michael Jordan Steakhouse that we've got in our nice resort. I'm a comedian, TV writer living in Los Angeles. I'm currently a writer, consulting, producer on a show called Spirit Rangers, which comes out on Netflix on October 10th. First time we can announce the release date, which is exciting.
Exciting.
So that's kind of I'm a Washington guy living in LA pretty much.
Nice. Let's see. In Washington, we're up here used to people coming from LA to move up here.
Wait, really?
Yeah. We've got a big influx up here in Washington of, LA people. It's fun. They drive better than we do. I can tell you that.
Wait, is there like a stereotype for like LA? Is there a stereotype for LA people and that Washington people have of just like, oh, LA people always blank or whatever?
No, not really. We're more like that with the Ohio people because we got an influx of Ohio people too. So
yeah, fair. Well, Washington's great. It's like, I always something I think is so funny is when my LA based friends who are comedians, when they like go on tour, oftentimes when they have their like first ever show in Washington, they'll like Facebook message me or text me like that day and be like, I'm going to retire in Washington. This state is beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Washington's great.
It is. It definitely is. So I got to know, as you mentioned, you went to WSU, but you went to school to be a weatherman. So is that my understanding? So I need to know how did you transition from going to school for being a weatherman to a comedy writer? Like, there's a bit of a difference there.
Oh yeah. So my origin story is that I grew up really loving comedy, shows like The Simpsons, Family Guy, like late night era Conan O'Brien. But because I didn't really see any like native comedians on TV at the time, I didn't think I was allowed to work in comedy. But the high school that I had like a really good kind of morning announcements TV news station. And I like found myself kind of being the wacky weather guy on that, like just like high school morning announcements thing. And it was really fun. And I like cracked a lot of jokes and had a lot of like different bits that I would do. So I think that for me, that like, I wasn't sure what itch that was scratching, but I was like, oh, this is what I want. This feels like kind of in the wheelhouse of the things I want to do. So I, followed that path, went to Washington State University, which has the Edward R. Murrow College of Communication, which is a very prestigious television news broadcasting, kind of school they have within Washington State University. And, went there thinking that I was going to be like a small market TV weather guy for like, Post Falls, Idaho or whatever. And, while I was, going to WSU and kind of when I was, in Western Washington too, I really dove into like stand up, DJing, just like local volunteer radio stuff, doing a lot of like live shows, hosting events, and at Washington State University doing a ton of like cable 8 college TV. And all of this I thought was like, preparation for me eventually like reporting the weather in a small town or something. And then a college TV show that I wrote, produced, and co-starred in ended up winning like a big national college comedy award, beating out like places like Ithaca, Harvard, a ton of like Ivy League schools. And I remember like winning that award and still thinking like, oh, this is going to look great on my resume when I'm, working in Georgia reporting the weather or something like that. And a bunch of my professors kind of pulled me aside and said like, hey, you could just work in comedy, right? Like they were just so, they kind of noticed something that I didn't really see in myself, which is like, oh, it's clear comedy is the thing that I cared about more than like small town news. It's like, I kind of saw like small town news as kind of like the way that felt realistic to me to pursue comedy as a career path. And, so after sort of their recommendations and, I did like an internship for a comedy production company, shortly after graduating and like a couple of other things like that. It just kind of gave me the push to like actually move to LA and like, just try to pursue comedy and see what would happen. That was in about 2010. When I moved here through alumni connections, I got like my first assistant job, working as the assistant to the guys that created Scare Tactics on Sci-Fi, hosted by Tracy Morgan. And, they, let me write bits in the show. I wrote some like scripts and jokes for Tracy Morgan, which is super fun. And then I just like, dove into the Los Angeles comedy scene with both feet, places like the Upright Citizens Brigade, Second City and stuff like that. And, really just, fell in love with and kind of realized what like I always thought was the case without like totally realizing, which is, oh, like, yeah, comedy and making people laugh is the thing that I want to do. I just didn't think I was allowed to do it. So, I've been here for about 12 years and, progressing and grinding away and working my way up in the industry. And, it feels really good to be kind of established in the place that I'm at. Like I, mentioned that I'm currently writing on a show called Spirit Rangers. That's like the first kid show in U.S. history, like created by a Native person with an all Native writers room, about Native characters played by Native actors. And, like last year I released an animated short with Comedy Central that I starred in and like wrote and directed. And, it really feels like I've achieved a lot of the stuff that I just didn't even think was possible even 12 years ago, which is cool and nuts and, and it's just neat.
It definitely is, because you've done a lot over the last few years. You've written for Ninjago, Legos Ninjago. You've done that Shrek short. You've were at Nerdist for a while. Like, it sounds like it's been a fun ride, at least.
Yeah, it's sort of like the entertainment industry is. It's a weird industry because it's. I feel like, like up until recently, like in society, it's like, you work at one company, you work your way up in that company, you get promoted, you might be at the same company for like 20, 30 years if you're lucky. Whereas the entertainment industry, it's like, you're kind of a leaf in the wind a little bit. So I'm working on Spirit Rangers right now. My contract wraps in a few months. And then after that, I don't know, like, who knows what I'll do next? It's just like whatever show wants me to write for it, or if I create my own thing or whatever. So you have to kind of learn to, and this is like some of the earliest advice that I got. You have to kind of like learn to love the uncertainty. And it has been a really fun process of just like, I feel so fortunate to be able to like work on all of these cool things and to, just continually have people want to work with me in Hollywood. And it's just, it's been a fun ride, and I feel fortunate to have gotten to do it,
Nice. I can understand that. So I need to know about the American Indian ready-to-wear catalog of 2018. I need to know where the inspiration came from that, because that's just brilliance in a book right there. That's
Oh, thank you. Yeah. That was actually a funny story with that. I like when I first moved to LA, just because I didn't really know a ton of other Native comedians, and there weren't really a lot of Native comedians getting a lot of opportunities in sort of kind of the mainstream comedy theaters in LA. So I just kind of wrote I wrote a lot of sketch comedy and did a lot of bits that were just, kind of like about what I thought people wanted, which was like stuff about Batman or Spider-Man or Lord of the Rings or whatever. And the American Indian Ready to Wear catalog, that was my first time really sitting down and being like, okay, like I'm passionate, like I'm friends with all these Native people in Native Hollywood. I'm Native myself, and like I'm really thoughtful about this stuff. But like I didn't really like think that like mainstream audiences would get jokes about Native stuff. So I was just like, oh, maybe that's not something I should chase. But this was kind of at the urging of a bunch of friends of mine. and, you know, kind of feeling like that's kind of where my heart was going creatively. I sat down and wrote this comedy zine that was basically about, you know, different weird kind of misconceptions of Native people in the media. So it's like, it's a fashion catalog that's basically like all of the different models are kind of weird Native stereotypes in the media. So there's like the Pocahontas, where it's just like, you know, it's sort of like, is your best friend a talking tree? And if not, are you really Native? Like that kind of thing. Or it's just like, so it's kind of phrased as, you know, what society puts upon us as Native people is like how we have to act based on kind of media stereotypes and stuff. And that's something that I just like self-produced and kind of made on my own. And I had my mom, who's a really great artist who paints a lot of murals and stuff for a living, do the designs for it. And I literally just like, I just self-released that. I printed out a few hundred copies that I literally just had under my bed in my apartment in North Hollywood. And whenever anybody would place an order online, I would like, you know, myself, like go to the printer, print it out and like put it in a padded envelope and mail it. And we ended up selling, I think, like five printings of it. Like, wow. I think it was stocked like all over the country, and I think a few places in like Canada, and I want to say like Australia too. And it was, you know, like I would say it was like kind of a weird underground hit as far as zines goes. It got like nominated for a really crazy book award in Canada. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun to write. And it's also like, this is how I knew like, oh, this is something that I should chase, chase as a comedian, is like, I wrote the first draft of that in 10 minutes. Like, It just like came out of me very quickly. And like from the first draft to like the draft that printed, it was like 90% the same. So it's like, oh, this is clearly something that's like in my soul that I should like, you know, like jokes about like weird Native microaggressions and stuff in the media. It's just like, oh, clearly that's something that's been wanting to get out of me for a long time.
Well, your mother did an amazing job with the likeness of Taylor Lautner. I can say that.
I'll tell her you said that. She'll probably ask me who Taylor Lautner is again, and then I'll be like, he was in Twilight. You don't need to know who he is.
So I gotta know, because you've done like, you know, Lego, Ninjago, and Shrek. Is there, when it comes to doing like your comedy and then actually writing out, you know, for a scripted show as such, is there a major difference in that? And the efforts you have to work with?
Yeah. So, I think that the differences are like, if you're writing for a show that you didn't create, ultimately you're writing in service of the showrunner, the show creator, kind of like you're basically trying to, capture their vision to the best of your ability and like to bring your voice to their vision too. But it's like, ultimately you're trying to help them create the best version of the show that they want to create. Whereas, you know, for my own comedy projects, it's just sort of like, oh, what do I want to do? And I think that like, it's not necessarily that those Venn diagram circles have to be completely separate from each other. Like something that's been really cool about working on Spirit Rangers is that, Chris Valencia, really amazing, Shumash TV writer who created the show and is the showrunner. Like, I feel like what she wants Spirit Rangers to be and what I want Spirit Rangers to be are like the exact same thing. So it's like, oh, that's an example where it's like, I'm like, writing in her voice, but it's also like what she wants is what I want and what I want is what she wants. So it's like this nice, it's just like a really fulfilling as a creative to feel like so much of like what I want in my voice and what I want and what I want to say is on the screen in the show. Whereas I've definitely worked for other jobs where it's just like, I guess how am I going to like write how this person who I don't like's voice is on screen? Or not person that I like, but like person where it's like, I feel like I'm like cramming my, you know, circular comedy sensibilities into a square hole and being like, this fits, so they don't fire me. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
It's just like every job kind of has its own things. And when you're making your own stuff, it's like that zine, like there was nobody who was dictating me what I needed to do. I just made a thing I wanted to make, you know?
Yeah. I was just always curious because it's, you know, when you're writing for somebody else, for something you didn't create, I'm just always curious how the process works because it's, I don't know. I don't know if my imagination could work as well doing it that way. Yeah, well, I've always been able to think I could write some serious issues of Batman, though.
You could write. I'm confident you could write a Batman. But it's like it is kind of like if you like just using Batman as an example, it's like if you were asked to write like a Batman issue, it still needs to like feel like Batman at the end,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like he still needs to be a rich guy who wears a suit and fights crime, you know, like, and there's definitely like, it's like, and you can go like crazy in different directions with Batman, but there's still definitely like parameters that you have to fit in for it to be Batman. And like sometimes when you work on a job, the parameters are like, oh, what I already write in my spare time is already kind of basically Batman. So this is like not that hard of a stretch. Whereas there are some things that you write on where it's just like, oh, I only write like Spider-Man comics. So like, oh, how am I going to figure out a guy who can't shoot out webbing? You know, like it's like that kind of thing.
Right on.
But it's fun. I mean, I like doing it. And that's kind of like, that's just what the job is, you know?
It's nice. It's good. I'm envious. Okay. So you have a short film that you did, my first Native American boyfriend, which has been doing the rounds for a while, and I believe you've won quite a few awards now, haven't you?
Yeah, it's screened in I want to say like over 40 festivals, and then it's won probably like half a dozen, like won or been nominated for awards here and there, which is really, it's my first time writing and directing a live action short. I've had a few animated shorts go through the festival circuit before this. So, you know, it's been really cool to see I feel like with creativity and a lot of the things that we do in our lives, like something that I've heard people say oftentimes is that like, we're all kind of mice looking for cheese. So it's like, we're looking for positive feedback to like keep on following, doing the thing that we're doing. So like, you know, if you like paint a painting and somebody says, oh, that's a really cool painting, that's just like a little bit of cheese that convinces you to keep following that path. And, you know, for me, it's like, yeah, this is my first time. Right. That's a really good painting, by the way. I see kind of the corner of it. Yeah, it's great. I know. I follow you and I know you're an artist. But it's like, so for me, you know, this short film doing really well on the festival circuit, it's like, oh, that's just like a lot of cheese that's convincing me to like, for sure, you know, make more shorts. And I've got like a feature that I'm, you know, trying to like pitch around to see if I can, you know, make and write and direct and stuff like that. It's just, yeah, you know, it just feels good to have people like the stuff you're making.
So was this your first time directing?
So, I've directed a few animated shorts before this, and I've directed a lot of like live stage stuff in Los Angeles before this. Okay. I like my first short ever was an animated short called Telling People You're Native American When You're Not Native. Is all like telling a bear you're a bear when you're not a bear. Way too long name for a short. When I originally named it, did not think I was going to have to say that name often, but here we are. And that, I released in like 2018, 2019, and that also kind of had a good run in the festival circuit. And, so that was my first animated short. And then the Comedy Central short that I released last year, I wrote and directed and starred in. And then so this short's my first like live action short, you know, with like actors that aren't animated, go through festivals, and it's fun. It's a good process and I like doing it. So
would you say you still like writing more than you like directing, or is it just something that you're just in all aspects of the film industry kind of guy?
So, what I'm about to say, apologies if it makes me sound dumb, but I just like stories, man.
There you go.
Yeah. So I think that like like I'm just excited about storytelling, and so you know, sometimes that takes the form of writing a script, sometimes that takes the form of directing something, sometimes that takes the form of like, you know, acting or doing storytelling or something, sometimes it takes the form of like, you know, a weird self-produced comedy zine that I sell in a box out from under my bed, you know. I like telling stories.
Speaking of stories, what was the inspiration behind the story for My First Native American Boyfriend?
Oh yeah, so the short, it's a short comedy film, sort of about like kind of the different microaggressions that I've run into just dating as a Native person in the 2020s. And the inspiration for it is a woman that I dated a few years ago, shook me awake at like 3 a.m, a few weeks into the relationship, with a look of just absolute concern in her eyes. Because she had to tell me that when she was 5 years old, her mom dressed her up like Pocahontas from the Disney movie, and she just had to apologize about it. And of course, my response was like, just go to bed. It's fine. But, I feel like, you know, those kinds of experiences, I feel like are not uncommon when you're dating people that are, you know, not a part of the culture that you're in. And, so I thought it'd be fun to take a lot of those kinds of different experiences that, you know, I've had, my friends have had, and, you know, kind of cram them together into a short and make fun of them, basically.